to camp and returned the child to Zainab. Zainab just stood there confused and overwhelmed by the fact that her brother's child was killed and didn't know how she was supposed to tell his mother. Hussein entered the child's mother's room. She got up quickly and looked at Hussein with tears in her eyes, asking for her son, asking for her angel that hasn't even lived his life, a star from Muhammad's here that fulfilled her life with passion and comfort. Hussein called Zainab into the tent. She came in with the child in her hands covered in his own blood. The mother slowly approached Zainab. She held her son's child in her arms, pressed him to her chest, and traveled away in her thoughts to a land of love and pride. With the name Hussein glancing in her mind, with all the sadness she felt comfort. The son of Muhammad then stood alone in front of his tent and realized that all has changed. No supporters, no companions, and no loyalists to stand by him. He began to call for his companions one by one. The unspoken replies of their death were louder than their voices. The only man left to answer his calls was his last son Zain al-Abidin, whose illness had devoured his body. When he heard his father's calls, he stood up, leaning on his sword, barely capable of walking. He stepped out of the tent and said, "O father, give me the honor to fight for you." Hussein then called his sister Zainab and told her to take him back into the tent, so that Muhammad's progeny would not be put to an end. At the time, every night would have a loyalist bring him his horse before battles. Zainab looked at her brother Hussein, found him alone with no men around him, so she herself brought him his horse. The distance she walked to get his horse was a very short distance, but it felt like the longest walk of her life, because for every step she would take, she would stop and cry. She felt in her heart that when she gave the horse to her brother, she was handing him the horse of death, the horse that will lead to his martyrdom and will lead to her eternal pain and agony. That's when she slapped herself in the face, thinking that how could a sister be so cruel and hand her beloved brother the horse that would guide him to his death. What cruelty, O Zainab! You are described as the most loving, the most caring, and the most loyal as your mother Fatima. Hussein wore his grandfather's turban and then called his sister and daughters to give him his farewells. His children embraced him so hard as if they were trying to hold on to his soul, as one was smelling his cloak, while the other was wiping her tears with his hand, and others mourning and crying, staring at him before he leaves them as young orphans. If Karbala had eyes on that night, tears would have dropped from its skies like rain during a storm. Hussein got on his horse and sprinted into the desert with scent filled with pride and dignity. When he arrived to the enemy walls, he shouted, "Army of Umayyad, if you are with no religion, then at least be Arabs like you claim to be, and do not harm my family and loved ones as long as I stand." There was Hussein, facing a stampede of armed soldiers. That's when the clash began. He would pull them back and forth, killing them one at a time, until Ibn Sa'd got very angry, finding so many of his men killed and injured. He screamed to his soldiers, "Unite together! Fight united as if you were one!" Hussein got closer and closer to the Euphrates River. When he finally arrived, he got off his horse and said, "O loyal horse, you are as thirsty as I am," and made way for him to drink. Even though they were in a desert and hadn't seen water for 3 days, the horse viciously refused to drink before his master drank. Hussein then got down on his knees. Just as he was about to take his first sip of water, he heard Ibn Sa'd shout to his army, "Do not let him drink the water, for now he is weak, but if he drinks he will finish you all." Then one soldier said, "Hussein, are you happy drinking water while the soldiers are invading your camp?" So Hussein threw the water out of his hands and attacked them like a fierce lion. He then penetrated through the enemy forces. Zainab heard the horses' gallops outside her tent. Her heart became thundered with fear, thinking that death had abducted her brother. so she ran outside to protect the woman and children. As soon as she stepped outside the tent, she found her brother standing in front of her. Seeing Hussein, her broken heart felt relief and comfort, and began to cry. When Hussein saw her in that way, he hugged her again and told her to stay strong and patient. Hussein then returned to the battlefield.